about
You
the
are now muted.
situation before, during, and after this play. And now let us focus on the writer his history, writer life, to see what's the reason behind, what's the reason affects the its play itself. So the Sir Henrik Ibsen, considered by many to be the father of the modern prosa drama, was born in Norway on March the 20th in 1828. He was the second of the six children of Ibsen's father, was a prominent merchant, but he went bankrupt. He went bankrupt when Ibsen was 8 years old. So Ibsen spent much of his early life living in poverty. From the 1851 to 1864, he worked in theaters in Bergen, and now it's called also, then they call it Christiana. At age 21, Ibsen wrote his first play, a five-act tragedy called Catiline. Like much of his early work, Catiline was written in verse. In 1858, Ibsen married Susanna Thorisson and eventually had one son with her. Ibsen felt that rather than merely live together, husband and wife should live as equals. This word is really affect all the plays and all the work of Ibsen, because this is his personal thought. Husband and wife should live as equals, free to become their own human being. This belief can be seen clearly in A Dollhouse. Consequently, absent critics attack him for failing to respect the institution of marriage, like his private life. Absent writing tended to stir up sensitive social issue. This means that the situation that time was really critical, so that when he raised his thoughts, he found a lot of positive, a lot of contract, so that a lot of person was don't were don't like his thought, and some corner of Norwegian society forward up his work, sensing criticism in Oslo about not only his work but also his private life, so that they refuse everything that time, not only his thought, but even his private life, his private, as he was respect his wife, he was deal with her as look like a human being, and he feel equality between he and his wife. Ibsen moved to Italy in 1868 with the support of a traveling grant and a stipend from the Norwegian government. Yes, here the Norwegian government pay him like a grant salary to travel to Italy. He spent the next 27 years living abroad, mostly in Italy and Germany. Yeah, that means he was a Trenga in the out of his country, spent all this time in Italy and Germany. Absent early years as a playwright were not gainful. He didn't get anything that time because he was not famous, but he did gain valuable experience during his time. In 1866, Ibsen published his first major theatrical success, a lyric drama called Brand. He followed it with another well-received verse play, Peer Gynt. These two works help solidity Ibsen's reputation. as one of the premier Norwegian dramatists of his era. In 1879, while living in Italy, Ibsen published his masterpiece, A Dollhouse, in like Birger and Brandt. The Dollhouse was different. It looked like there is difference between his two walks and then the adult house. It's like different in thought, different in even the structure and in the style. Adult house was written in prose. It is widely considered a landmark in the development of what soon become a privilege of theater realism, which strive to portray life accurately and chance idealized vision of it. In a dollhouse, Ibsen employs the themes and structures of the classical tragedy while writing in prose about everyday. Even he used the slang language to be to be clear for everyone, to the audience to be really familiar with the play and the style. Respectable people, a dollhouse also manifests as some concern for women right and for a human right in general. Yeah, this is the main concept that Epsom built in this play is the women right and the human right. Yes, so like this is the base that the other revolution take it. The Adult House is the play consists on three acts. The Act One, the House, open on Christmas Day. Nora Helma enter her well-functioning living room, the setting of the entire play, carrying several package. Torvald Helma, Nora's husband, come out of his study when he hears her arrive. He gets her playfully and effectually put then chide her for spending so much money on a Christmas gift. The conversation revealed that the Halmers have had to be careful with money for many years, but that Torvald has recently obtained a new position at the bank. He obtained the bank manager position. Yes, a new position that will make the money available for the family. At the bank where he worked, that will Helen, the maid, announced that her doctor has come. Yeah, this is in Dr. Rank has come to visit. At the same time, another visitor has arrived. This one in a great surprise, a Christian Lane, a farmer school friend, come into half years, but having read that Mr. Lane's husband passed away a few years earlier. Miss Lane tells Nora that when her husband died, she was left about her first year of marriage to Valdo. She explained that she were very poor and both had become sick. She adds, and the couple had to travel to Italy so that Teobaldo could recover. Yeah, this is the medical recommendation. He should travel to another country, another place, so that he will recover soon. But the family have no money to cover the traveling cost. Yeah. Noura inquired further about Mr. Lane's life, and Mr. Lane explained that for years she had to care for her sick mother and her two younger brother. She stated that her mother has passed away, so and the brother are too old to need her instead of feeling relief. Mr. Lin say that feels empty because she has no occupation. She hoped that Torvald may be able to help her obtain employment because Torvald have a new position in the bank, so that she asked her old friend if her husband be able to help her obtain employment in the bank. Nora promised to speak to Torvald and then reveal a great sorry, secret to Mr. Lane without Torvald's knowledge. Nora illegally borrowed money from the trip for the trip that she and Torvald took to Italy. She told Torvald that the money had come from her father for years. Nora revealed she has worked and saved in secret, slowly repaying the debt, and soon it will be fully repaid. Krogstad, a low-level employee at the bank where Torvald worked, arrived and processed into Torvald's study. Nora reacted uneasily to a crossed-head presence. Yeah, she doesn't like him. And Dr. Rank coming out of the study say Grostad it's morally sick. Once he has finished meeting with Krogstad, Trevor come into the living room and say that he can probably hire Mr. Land at the bank. Dr. Rank, Dr. Rank Trevor and Miss Lane then depart, leaving Nora by herself. Nora's children return with her nanny and Mary, and Nora plays with them until she notices Krogstad present in the room. The two converse, and Krogstad revealed to be source of Mora secret love. Krogstad stated that Torvald wanted to fire him. Yeah, Krogstad tell Nora that her husband want to fire him from his position at the bank and alludes to his own poor reputation. He asked Nora to use her influence to ensure that his position remains secure. When she refused, Grostad pointed out that he has in his possession a contract that contained Nora forgery of her father's signature. Grostad blackmails Nora, threatening to reveal her crime and to bring shame and disgrace on both Nora and her husband if she doesn't prevent Torvald from firing him. Grostad leaves, and when Torvald returns, Nora tries to convince him not to fire Grostad, but Torvald will hear nothing of it. He declares Grostad an immoral man and state that he feels physically ill in the presence of such people. Yeah, it looks like he explained he does like him so much as this person is really in bad moral. The act to open on the following day, Christmas. Yeah, it's look like the after the Christmas day is the first day of the year. So alone, Nora paces her living room filled with anxiety. Miss Lind arrive and help show Nora costume for the ball that Nora will be attending and her neighbors home. The following evening, yeah, Nora tells Miss Lind that Dr. Rank has a mortal illness that he inherited father. Suspicious behavior leads Mr. Lin to guess that Dr. Rank is source of Nora's loan. Nora denies Mr. Lin's charge but refuses to reveal the source of his distress. Torvald arrives and Nora again begs him to keep Krogstad employed at the bank. But again, Torvald refuses when Nora presses him. He admits Krogstad's moral behavior isn't all that bother him. He dislikes Ghost House over family attitude. Torvald and Nora argue until Torvald sends the maid of delivery letter of dismissal. Torvald leaves. Dr. Rank arrives and tells Nora that now he's close to death. She attempts to cheer him up and began to flirt with him. She seems to be preparing to ask him to intervene on her behalf in her struggle with Thorvald suddenly. And began off, yeah, she seems to be preparing to ask him to intervene on her behalf in her struggle with Thorvald. Suddenly, Dr. Rank reveals to Nora that he isn't in. Suddenly, Dr. Rank revealed to Nora that he is in love with her. Yeah, this is what Dr. Rank announced to her when she was trying to ask him to intervene on her behalf to discuss with her husband. In light of his revelation, Nora refused to ask Dr. Rank for anything. Once Dr. Rank leave, Grosstand arrive and demand an explain for his dismissal. He wants respectably and has changed the term of the blackmail. He now insists to Nora that not only that he be rehired at the bank, but that he be rehired in a higher position. Yeah, it's look like now as he has the secret of the Nora, the signature of Nora, the signature of Nora's father. Now, not only it look like he requests her in an upper level, not only to rehire again to his work, but also to be rehired in a higher position. He then put a letter detailing Nora's death and in uh, Helma's letter. He put letter in her husband letter box that explain everything about her crime. In a panic, Nora tells Miss Lind everything, and Miss Lind instructs Nora to delay Torvald from opening the book's letter, as long as possible while she goes to speak with Grostad. In order to distract Torvald from the letterbox, Nora began to practice the tarantella. The tarantella is an Italian dance, so that it looked like she wanted to prevent him from opening the book's letter. She in front of him trying to dance an Italian dance that's called the tarantella to make him not focus on the book's letter to open, then to see the fact within this box. Nora began to practice the tarantella she will perform at the evening's concert party. In her agitated, emotional state, she danced wildly and violently. It looked like this expression of deep emotion when she was dancing, and at the same time she was afraid. Yeah. Nora managed to make Trivaldo promise not to open his mail until after she performs at the party. Miss Lin soon returned and say that she has left Grostan unknown, but that he will be gone until the following evening. The next night, as the costume party takes place upstairs, Grosstand meet Miss Lind in the Helma's living room. Their conversation revealed that the two had once deeply in love. Yeah, it looked like they were lover before, and the story behind this, Miss Lind was in love with Grosstand before, and she left him for one reason. Yeah, reason of money. Yeah, but Miss Lind left Grosstand for a wealthier man who would enable her to support her family. She tells Grosstand that now that she is free of her own family obligation, nothing will obligate her, yeah, no obligation related to her family, and wish to be with a Grosstand and care for his children. So like, yeah, she expresses her feeling in front of him, and she told him that she liked to get married from him and to take care of his children. Grosand is overjoyed and say he will mend his letter back before Torvaldo can read it and learn Nora's secret. Miss Lind, however, insists he left the letter because she believed both Torvald and Nora will be better off once the truth has been revealed. Soon after Grostan departure, Nora and Torvaldo enter back from the costume ball. After saying good night to Mr. Lind, Torvald tells Nora how desirable she looks as she dances. Yeah, what beautiful when she was dancing during the party. Dr. Rank, who was also at the party and has come to say goodnight, promptly interrupt Troval's advance on Norris. After Dr. Rank leave, Trovald find in his letter to visiting cards, each with a black cross above the name. It look like it's a sample that a black cross mean, yeah, he will be die soon. Yeah, this is the simple. Nora knows Dr. Rank card constitute his announcement that he will soon die, and she informed Trovald of his fact. She then insists that Trovald read Krogstad's letter. Trovald read the letter and is outraged. He was, yeah, he was really angry. He called Nora a hypocrite and a liar and complained that she has ruined his happiness. Looked like she broke even everything beautiful that night. He declared that she will not be allowed to raise their children. Helen then bring in a letter. Trovaldo opens it and discover that Grosstand has written Nora a contract, which contained the forged signature, forged signature. Overjoyed, Torvald attempts to dismiss his past insult, but his harsh words have triggered something in Nora. It's look like in Nora. That means it's look like the harsh word plus Nora internally. She felt upset. She felt uncomfortable. She felt that I'm not unhappy. She declared that despite their 8 years of marriage, they do not understand one another. Troval, Nora Assad, has treated her like a doll. Now she explained that when it's looked like she told him that you deal with me, it's looked like a doll to be play with this doll and admire her whenever you want. She decided to leave Troval, declaring that she must make sense of herself and everything around her. She walked out, slamming the door behind her. Yeah, this is the point of this play consists on this thing. Yeah, it look like explain what's the concept that time related to how to treat the women, and this exactly what I mentioned, and this is the main concept on this play. I share with you the presentation, which include a lot of topics, and I hope that you have a nice time when listening to this play. So thank you so much, Mr. Dr. Majidi.
Okay. Have you finished? Thank you very much indeed, Safa. It was very good and thorough presentation, and I have enjoyed it. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
I'm going to give. Of course, you have explained everything, what has happened in the play, and you had some explanation about why this play is considered to be realist and at what time it was written.
Exactly.
Actually, let me, if you have anything to add, please add. If not, I can cut off your microphone so that there won't be any interferences when I'm speaking and when you are speaking. Do you have anything to add, Safa? Or
Actually, I want to thank you so much, and now I hope to benefit from your kind experience and your kind explanation. So
Thank you
please, thank you so much. Okay, much appreciated.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, the reason I cannot speak very thoroughly is that I'm afraid I have lost my brother 3 days ago because of COVID-19. And I do not have, or I'm not in the mood of being in the class. But since I did not want to postpone your classes, I wanted to open the class so that you can present your presentation in order not to violate the orders of the presentations. So if I am, the mood of my speaking is different, and if in some cases you do not hear me perfectly, this is the reason. Okay, so please forgive me. But I'm trying very hard to uh, be in a good mood to speak. Okay. Well, as we have started our course with realistic movement and naturalistic movement, and these movements are very important because we are dealing with the contemporary um, plays. So we have decided to have at least two or three plays written in 19th century, and they are categorized as um, realist. For a few minutes. Just give me 1 minute because I have to do something and come back to your class again. I hope that you have my voice. I'm sorry, I had to disconnect myself for a few minutes. Um, as I was talking, um, let me start with realism a little bit as a background and then come to Doll's House specifically and talk about it. Actually, everything was perfectly categorized and presented in the presentation of Mr. Safar. I'm just going to repeat some few extra points. Now, the background of realism, actually, as it was mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, in the last half of the 19th century, uh, actually began as an experiment to make theater more useful to society, because this movement started in to show itself in the form of novel, mostly from the beginning of 19th century, and in the works and novels of writers such as Honoré de Balzac, um, or Stendhal, um, or Gustave Flaubert in France, Charles Dickens in a way, and Trollope and Kingsley in England, and many others, of course, and in other parts of the world. But this movement very um, rapidly emerged and replaced and took the place of Romanticism, which has become very, very popular at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. And this movement very swiftly um was reflected in theater as well. So the mainstream theater from 1859 to 1900, the from the middle of 19th century or Victorian period up to the end of 19th century, which is famous as the Fin de siècle period, was still bound up in melodrama. Melodrama, the mixture of both tragic movements and comedy in a way, and very sensitive. The spectral plays, which represented disasters and this kind of things, and etc. Comic, operas, vaudevilles, and different forms in this period. But political events, including attempts to reform some political systems, as it was referred to at the beginning of the presentation, led to some different ways of thinking. So revolutions in Europe in 1848 showed that there was a desire for political, social, and economic reform. And many governments were frightened into promising change, but most didn't implement changes after the violence ended. So every time there was a uprising and a movement, for example, in England, it was harshly stopped and brutally uh, attacked by the government and by the police. So none of these reforms or reform movements led to any positive ending. For example, the Chartist movement in England, or the women movements in England and other parts of Europe, they were all abandoned by the um, running governments, and they were stopped by the police. But the working classes, because as it was referred to, the after the emergence of industrialization, we have the appearance and the emergence of a new class in England as the first in fully industrialized country in the world. And this new class that was later labeled as bourgeois class by Karl Marx, the forerunner of the communist and the socialist philosophy or socialism, philosophy of socialism. This new class did not have any connection with the upper class or the aristocratic class, or the lower class. So they were something in between. That's why they were called the middle class. That their attitudes, their thoughts, their ideas, their working, their aptitude was based on a system which was posed by some social thinkers such as Bentham and Stuart Mill in under the name of or a title of specific economical technique which was called utilitarianism. As the name clearly shows, it insists on the utility. They believe that everything that, if I want to put it very shortly and in a simple words, anything is possible and should be stick to if it brings benefit to many people and to the nation. And this has made and opened the hand of the middle class factory owners to exploit their workers, both men and women, with this reason that we are doing this in the benefit for the society. So if the benefit in their eyes is mostly for most of the people of the society, it is able and it is uh, advances were also encouraged by industry and trade and solve human problems. That's why 18th century is called the beliefs and philosophy thoughts of 18th century, which was actually century. But the work classes still had to fight for every form unions. So unionization and the strikes became the principal weapons that workers would use after the 1860s. But success came only from work stoppage and violence. In other words, if I want to put it in more explainable way, there seems to be a kind of a pragmatism reigned in a very serious way in America and by some American philosophers such as William James or me. Now, these three famous names and philosophers, American pragmatism, um, since this idea was posed by the American philosophers. It is interesting that Henry James, the very famous American realist novelist, who it is a very famous saying that William James, um, Henry James wrote his novels in a psychological way, and William James wrote his or brought psychology in his philosophy because, for example, he is the only he is the first philosopher who have used the stream of consciousness in realist novels, and it was used by many sorry, not realist writers. I'm so sorry, modernist writers. But for example, technique that's um, turn off the screw. It's not a very long novel. Concern of the novel is the psychology, children and their maid who is looking after them. And so the um, since romantic idealism and pragmatism um, and was rejected, reigned for a long time. So the common man at that period seems to feel that which was presented in the form of plays. Actually, three major developments helped lead to the emergence of realism. Um, if we want to be very, um, if we want to scrutinize how and what thoughts actually left impact on the idea of realism in a time that reform was emerging different societies in Europe, we can refer to the ideas of Auguste Comte, the German uh, philosopher, who often considered to be the father of sociology, and he developed a theory known as positivism. Among the Auguste Comte's ideas was an encouragement for understanding the cause and effect of nature through precise observation. Um, so otherwise, it was just considered as real if it was not thoroughly being observed through science. The other person who have left a great impact in the ideas of the both realist and the modernist was the biologist Charles Darwin, who published The Origin of a Species in 1859. And the creators of the worldwide sphere, which exists to this day. Charles Darwin's essential series suggested that the life developed gradually from common ancestry and that life favored survival of the fittest, which is considered to be one of his most famous quoted um, terms. The implication of Darwin's theories were therefore could be summarized in three um, different comments. First, people were controlled by heredity and environment. So they are enforced by the environment and the heredity, and they cannot get themselves rid of these two things. And this becomes more severe in naturalism, as we can see in the works of um, naturalist novels such as, or naturalistic novels such as Germinal um, by Émile Zola, or many different novels by Thomas Hardy, for example, Jude the Obscure, Far from the Madding Crowd, or Woodlanders, Mayor of the Castle Bridge, Tess of the Duverville, and so forth. Second, the behaviors were beyond our control because they are instinct. We cannot control them as human beings because they are natural instinct. Just like animals that they cannot control their instincts, human being is the same because the ancestors of humans were animals. So this is the second one. And the third one, believing that humanity is a natural object rather than being above or else. Because according to the 18th century and 19th century belief, the relationship in the course of creation, at the top was God, next followed by the angels, and in the middle, when we come to the earth from the metaphysical world, we come to human being as the best and the most important being on earth. And then below human being is, or are actually animals, and at the least level we have the plants, or the nature. This was called chain of being. The idea which became very popular during the 18th century, we can see the reflection of this in one of Alexander Pope's essay on man, in which he tries to explain this, although he was not a philosopher, he was just a literarian. You know that Alexander Pope was a neoclassicist, and his verse essay was in heroic couplet format. Another philosopher which left a great impact in this period, as I have mentioned before, is Karl Marx. Uh, in the late 1840s, he espoused a political philosophy arguing against urbanization and in favor of the more equal distribution of wealth, something that was called socialism. So these three stated ideas above, Karl Marx, Charles Darwin's, and Auguste Comte's positivism, um, helped open the door for a type of a theater that uh, would have been different from any that had come before. Um Maybe this is relative to say that even Richard Wagner, the very famous German opera writer and musician, Richard Wagner, while rejecting contemporary trends toward realism, helped lead toward a moderate realistic theater. Uh, Wagner wanted complete uh, illusionism, but wanted the and he wanted to be of a myth maker instead. That's why he very much paid attention to most of his works are considered to be symbolic, and his works are very important in symbolism. So true drama, according to Richard Wagner, should be deeped in the magic founding of music, which allows greater control over performance than spoken drama. So Wagner wanted complete control over every aspect of the production in order to get a kind of a what he called a master art work. Because Wagner aimed for complete illusion, even though his operas were not all realistic, but many of his production practices helped lead the way for realism. For instance, the auditorium was darkened, the stage was framed with a double uh, proscenium's arc, and there were no side boxes and no center aisles, and all seats were equally good. Further, he forbade musicians to tune in the orchestra pit, allowed no applause or curtain falls or calls, and strove for historical accuracy in scenery and costumes. So, therefore, even though Wagner's operas are fantastic and mythical, his attempts at illusionism helped again public acceptance for realism. So, as I have mentioned before, Wagner is not considered to be a true realist, but the techniques that he has used in his operas, with a combination of music, the setting of um, the chairs around the aisles and the scene, uh, and the symbolic thing that he has used on the stage in every um, opera actually shows the effect of realism on the stage. Um, if you want to talk about the beginning of the movement in theater, we can say that realism came about partly as a response to new social artistic conditions, which was posed by, for example, Richard Wagner. So the movement, if we can call it, began in France and by 1860 had some general aspects, I mean realism. Um, one of them was truth resides in material objects we perceived to all five senses. So truth is verified through science. It should be what um in a form of philosophy it was posed by German philosopher Auguste Comte as empiricism, which was followed by the English, actually praised by the English philosophers such as John Locke, Hume, Berkeley, Godwin, and others. So, truth uh, should be accepted and believed in if it is received by the five senses that human being has: tactile, olfactory, auditorial, gustatory, and what else? And tactile and visual. What we can see, what we can hear, what we can smell, what we can taste. These are the five senses. If any phenomenon is approved by our five senses, uh, for many time it is acceptable. So everything should be accepted scientifically, according and through science. Every experience should have the same outcome at the end. Uh, the scientific method, observation, would solve everything. The only way that we can trust and can solve all the problems and be understood and accepted is through scientific method, which started from the beginning of the 18th century and dominated the century, and it was passed into the 19th century. And third, there was human problems, where the highest were home of science. Human problems were the highest place of the science. In art, according to the realist view, had as its purpose to better mankind. They used realism in order to make the situation of human being better. Drama was to involve the direct observation of human behavior. Therefore, there was a thrust to use contemporary settings and time periods, and it was to deal with everyday life and problems as their subjects. As it was mentioned in the presentation, for example, the language was a slang. The language was everyday speech between the characters. No specific, eloquent, uh, literal or literary language. It was very ordinary, and the settings are very ordinary. Just as we can see in George Bernard Shaw's the Irish playwright, and what he does in mise en scène. Um, as I have mentioned already, realism first showed itself in staging and costuming, and three-dimensional details had been added by the 1800s, the beginning of the 19th century. By the mid years of the 19th century, for example, in 1850 onward, theater productions used historically accurate setting and costumes and details, partly as a result of the romantic ideals, but it was rather to get realism accepted widely. So the clothes that they used to wear, the act the actors did on the stage, the speech that they have used was very close to the ordinary or the representation of what it could have been seen in the society, and it was reflected directly on the stage. Richard Wagner, as I've mentioned before, wanted theater to fuse the emotional and the intellectual, though his operas were highly mystical and fantastic. Remember, I've told you that his works are mostly symbolic rather than realistic. During the writers of this period who are very influential in theater, we can refer to Alexander Dumas and his novels, for example, Camellia, and which was dramatized in 1849 on the stage about a kept woman. The play was written in prose and dealt with contemporary life. Eventually, he wrote thesis plays about contemporary social problems. We have thesis novels as well, when they are specifically directly talking about the problems of the society or among the people. Another person that was influential in this period is Emily Aguirre. Also wrote plays about contemporary conditions. And in our case, George Bernard Shaw in England, uncommon for his witty humor and made fun of societies, nation using for the purpose of the educating and changing. And his plays tended to show the accepted attitude and then demolished that attitude while showing his own solutions. Plays such as Arms and the Man, Mrs. Warren's Profession, Major Barbara, Pygmalion, and which was later in 20th century, it was adapted as a film, musical film, as My Fair Lady. Pygmalion and Major Barbara are among the best works and the famous works by George Bernard Shaw. But Henrik Ibsen, the Norwegian Henrik Ibsen, is considered to be the father of the modern realistic drama. His plays attacked society's values and dealt with unconventional subjects within the form of the well-made play, which were casually related. So Ibsen perfected the well-made play formula, and by using a familiar formula, made his plays with a very shocking subject matter acceptable, as what happened in the Dallas, for example. He described and discarded soliloquies. I mean, he did not use any soliloquies on the stage anymore. Soliloquy means when a character um, start speaking his mind or his heart or her heart or her mind to the audience in a way that other characters on the stage are either absent, or if they are present but they cannot hear that character. So he discarded. Or asides. Asides is another technique which was used in theater when one of the characters left out the other characters on the stage, and while they were present on the stage, he or she came toward the side of the stage and started speaking to the audience by giving some either information or thoughts. And some other techniques. So he did not use such classical techniques. Um, Exposition in the plays was motivated. Exposition means the beginning of the play when the audience become familiar with the characters, with the place, with the setting, with the time, and the primary incidents of the action. Um, they were motivated, and there were casually related scenes, inner psychological motivations, which were absent in the previous dramas or forms of drama, and was emphasized the environment had an influence on characters' personalities. And all the things characters did and all of the things the characters used revealed their socioeconomic milieu. So he became a model for later realistic writers. Among the subjects which were addressed by Henrik Ibsen in his plays are the role of women, which is called euthanasia, or war and business, and the syphilis. These three are the most common themes that were used in his works. As we can see, the role of woman and war and business somehow uh, are reflected in Doll's House, specifically the role of woman. Um, the list of his works actually are in front of you in the presentation, but among them, Ghost, published in 1881, is very famous, and it dealt with the concept of the scenes of the father transferring to the son, resulting in syphilis, or Pillars of Society, which was published in 1877, which dealt with war and business, and Hedda Gabler, one of his best works, published in 1879. Nora leaves her husband's forward, sorry, a powerful woman takes her life at the end of the play to get away from her boredom with society, which was under the influence of patriarchal rules. And The Doll's House, published in 1879, that it was discussed in this session. The main character, Nora, leaves her husband, Thorwald, and her children at the end of the play, often considered the Islam must have been very shocking to the Victorian audience because Victorian period was full of ideas, and leaving the house by a woman leaving her husband and her children at the end of the story seems to be something very, very strange to the very traditional um thoughts of Victorian period in England. Sorry, and in Norway as well. In a way that no one could have accepted. So later drama, but his realism affected others and helped lead to realistic theories and rejections against